Hi, it's Pastor Andy with our Tuesday video, and as I mentioned yesterday, our main text for this week, Romans chapter 11, the end of Romans chapter 11, beginning in verse 25 through verse 36, is broken down into three main parts. And I covered verses 25 through 27 yesterday in talking about the mystery of God, and of course, all of this was in the context of Hub Sunday on Sunday. But today I want to talk about the mercy of God in verses 28 through 32, and then tomorrow the mind of God as we close out this chapter. So with you may recall a few weeks ago when we were looking at Romans chapter 9, I shared one of the quotes that Paul used, and he uses many, many quotes throughout Romans 9, 10, and 11, many quotes from the Old Testament. And I mentioned that there was one from Exodus chapter 33, in which God, when he's talking to Moses, said, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. Well, the reality is that idea is very nice, as long as you're the one receiving mercy and or compassion. But remember that Paul also wrote in that same paragraph, Romans 9:18, that God hardens whom he wills. So at the time of this writing, that Paul is writing the letter to the Romans, and we could say the same thing is true even today, there is a time that a partial hardening had come upon the Jew. We see that in the passage I mentioned from yesterday. I didn't talk about that part, but Romans 11:25. And that is going to take place, that partial hardening is taking place until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Well, that original group, what that means is that original group, the Israelites, now called Jews, who were the original receivers of that mercy of God that God is talking about in Exodus 33, in the book of Exodus, which is about the Exodus, that original group that was a part of the Exodus had received that mercy, had received that compassion, and now they were on the outside looking in. Not everybody. We've talked about the remnant from early in Romans chapter 11. But now there is another group, the Gentiles, who are receiving mercy from God. But in Romans 11:29, we see another truth from God. And it says that God's gifts and His calling are irrevocable, meaning they cannot be revoked. They cannot be removed. They cannot be withdrawn in any way. They are a promise. Now, they might be delayed, and that's kind of what's happening here. They might be set aside for a time, but any gift or calling from God is indeed permanent. And that permanence is based upon the account of God making a covenant with Abram/Abraham, and it continued with the covenant through Isaac, through Jacob, and therefore through the forefathers, to and then through the remainder of the Israelites. Now, the reason God, His gifts and His calling are irrevocable is because, as Titus 1:2 says, God cannot lie, or God does not lie. Either way, He does not lie because He cannot lie. And God made a promise to the founders of the faith, those founders I just mentioned ago. And although most of the Romans who might be reading this letter are maybe Gentiles, they are a spiritual descendant of Abraham, as Paul wrote in Romans chapter 4. And the people of, even though most of them may be Gentiles, Paul is making clear that God still has a special place for ethnic Israel, and that will be realized again at the proper time. Exactly when and how it's going to be realized is unknown. We talked about that. That is part of the mystery that I mentioned yesterday. But God knows that answer. God will reveal it in His time. But for now, how and when the nation of Israel will be restored as a people of faith, they don't just get automatically brought in. It is still through faith that will happen, and faith in Jesus specifically that will happen. How and when? Well, that is uncertain. But it will happen, and it must happen, because, as Paul has made clear throughout Romans, we cannot be saved on our own. And, as he made clear in Romans 3:23, all Jew and Gentile, then for us, American, whatever, nationality, however you might want to identify yourself, from a nationality, from a white, black, whatever perspective, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Therefore, without God's mercy, none of us could be saved, but thankfully, God does have mercy, and some will realize that mercy. Again, God's words, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. As I mentioned back then, God is God, we are not. He gets to make that choice. So it's interesting to note that even as Paul is talking about the salvation of the Jews, in these few verses here, verses 28 through 32, he does mention the disobedience of the Gentiles who are Christian. And this is very significant for us as well, because in Romans 1, verses 18 through 32, which we looked at like almost a year ago, Paul tells us what it means to be unrighteous, and that the disobedience that we have in our lives is a part of being disassociated from God. So Romans 11:30 does not say that those Christians, those Gentiles who are now Christians, have become obedient. In Romans 1, it says they were unrighteous, they were ungodly, they were disobedient. Here in Romans 11:30, it does not say, Paul does not say or even infer that they have become obedient. It says that the disobedience is still present, but the mercy of God covers that disobedience. Verse 32. And everyone will be saved, at least everyone who calls on the name of the Lord. Romans 10:13 will be saved. So everything we have, including and most importantly our salvation, is a gift of God. It is because of His mercy. It is because of His grace. So we should be thankful for that mercy. We need to praise Him for the grace He gives. And one of the ways that we can show our thanks is by telling others that God is a merciful God and helping them to know Him so that His mercy might come upon them as well.